What's going on, guys? So I'm gonna start the video by saying congratulations to TJ for actually getting his caliber fired up. It sounds like we were actually on the same pace to try and start our cars the same night for the first time since rebuilding and doing all the stuff that we are. I gotta figure out a ground issue on my car, but I actually heard his car run before mine, so congratulations, buddy. That's really cool. With the projects I got going on here, I did get out here today. The serial connector showed up for HP Tuner, so I got that guy wired in. That way when we lock on with HP tuners, I will actually be able to log wideband. They did have a really long lead that come out of the gauge, luckily enough. And then I just went ahead and tied my grounds in right there for the lead itself, because you need to ground the serial connector for HP tuners. And when they ground that, they want you on 5 and 6. So that's where I got this guy set up, is on 5 and 6. And then I'm gonna use input number 4 for wideband. So all I gotta do is reconfigure my gauge layout for the AEM wideband, because all my stuff is set up for Innovate. And then we'll be able to actually log wideband with data when I drive his car. I did make the mistake of ordering the wrong coolant overflow for Mark's car. When I looked, it did show that there was 2 different ones. So I chose the option to not have one that was recirculated, that was just gonna be an overflow with a drain. And it showed 2 Jazz ones. Well, they had 2 part numbers. One was like a 602 something, 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 and then the other one was a 600 with the same number sequentially. So I was like, well, what's the difference? So I looked at them quick, and I didn't look at them good enough apparently, because when I ordered them, I accidentally ordered one that does recirc. So it does have the nipple on the bottom that you would hook up to like a water pump inlet hose or something like that. I called Summit and I said, hey, I made the mistake. I got online, I figured out what I did. Do you guys sell the valve in case somebody breaks theirs? Something they could just swap out, you know, just the part itself, or do they got to buy the whole jug? So he looked. And then he came back and he said, well, I think it's this thread pitch and this and that. And I said, well, it's not really a thread pitch, it's a 3/8 barb. It just pops in a rubber grommet in the bottom. And the sales guy goes, really? And I was like, yeah, I just took it apart so I could try and figure it out myself. Now I'm calling you to see if I can get the part now that I know I can change it. So he comes back and he says, well, they don't have the part, but he can sell me another one. So I paid for another one to get here. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, I was like, something doesn't seem right. So I got online and I tried to Google drain valves, drain cocks. I was in Summit going through all the parts that they offer, and they didn't have anything. In fact, well, they did have something, and the only ones that they did have was drain cocks like this, and this is not what I wanted. I didn't want to deal with this damn thing. So what I ended up doing was I went back to Google and I Googled Jazz overflow drain valve. Had a leak, took me right to Summit, and this one was actually for a 90 valve. So I clicked on the part group and I sifted through them a little bit, and then I found the straight one. So luckily enough, they did have the same one. So the drain valve is gonna look just like this one right here. And then you can just open this valve and dump it. And then it's just a little ball valve is all it is. So luckily enough, I got one. So I have a whole overflow coming, and I have a drain valve coming. So when the drain valve actually gets here, or the other overflow, whichever shows first, because they were both ordered on the same day, is gonna end up getting put on this car. If it's a drain valve, then I'll pull the 90 fitting out of that one, put it together with this one. And if it's the whole other can assembly, then it'll just get that can assembly, and then when the other drain valve shows up, I'll just stuff it on this can, and we'll use it on Josh's Supra. I do still have to pull the washer bottle from Mark's car. I'm just gonna wait to pull the bumper off until that does show up, or at least that side. I might even not pull the bumper, I might just pull the wheel well and work from inside of there, so that might happen as well. But either way, when that shows up, that will get mounted. I got my HP lead hooked up so I can log wideband, lock onto his tune, make a couple changes, and then we'll right the car. And then we'll go take it for a rip once I get the overflow in and I get that vacuum block in. I still have to do that yet too. So I'm out here today, so I've been out here today, and we got that stuff done on Mark's car. I have my multimeter hooked up, and I'm gonna do a voltage drop on my battery cables to see if that's why battery voltage is tanking on this thing when I try and hit the starter. I do have the battery charged. It currently does have the 480 amp battery in it, the more powerful one, which is conveniently smaller, which is weird. I mean, it's heavier, but takes up less space. I got this battery charged. It's been out here all weekend. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try and crank this guy and see what I got for a voltage drop on the battery cable here. And if it does show me something excessive, then I know what's going on. If it doesn't, then I'll have to start moving somewhere else and try and figure out where my voltage loss is so I can actually crank this car. So yeah, let's get going on this stuff and see what we got here. Check something here for grins. See if it's a battery voltage issue or if I'm losing my ECM. Starter crank. Well, we know the starter will crank it over with that relay, so now I just got to figure out why I'm losing my ECM. Must be one of the circuits that I did for the ignition switch, and I took the run start circuit away from it where the run accessory circuit's still there. I'm going to hook HP tuners up and see if I lose comm with the ECM while I crank. And if I am, then I know what's going on. Which would suck because I don't want to have to pull this harness back out. Guess we'll play that by ear. Get this scanner loaded here. Open it twice, huh? I only need one. Nope, I don't need you. There we go. The scanner loaded. We got data, so let me hit the crank. Yep, I am. I'm losing ECM when I hit the crank. When I wired it, I must have left out the run crank circuit. Well, that sucks. But I guess at this point it is what it is. What we do now is we dig in, see what we got going on, and go from there. What that means for me is now I'm gonna have to go inside, get out the service manual, go through it to figure out what my run start circuits are, the run accessory circuits, and get all that stuff figured out. And then once I got the right power going to the ECM on the right circuits, maybe this guy will crank for me. I'm gonna go inside and I'm gonna try and get this stuff figured out and get the wiring figured out here, and then we'll get back out here and see what we got going on. I'm actually gonna do a continuation of last night's video and just tie it into today's video. I did get a couple of parts today. I got my charging cable showed up for the tablet, and then I got the OBD2 splitter. Now I checked a lot of reviews on this thing before I bought it, and it seems like a lot of diesel guys had used it for like their EFI Live or something like that, and they never had a problem with it. So I'm hoping that we don't have an issue either, because we're kind of do the same thing, and they said that they would have to take it to like a shop or a dealer, and they would put a scan tool on, and it didn't interfere with any of the data. So I'm hoping that I get the same result, and I was hoping this bracket was going to be metal, but it is plastic, so if it breaks, they did give me zip ties, so I can go ahead and I'll zip tie it up somewhere just to get it out of the way, because the way it's set up is it's got a side plug, and then you can actually mount this one somewhere to this bracket and kind of keep it out of the way. So I'm gonna use this one for the Bluetooth mount thing, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try and get this up as close to the tablet as I can. That way it's easy to get to. It'd be pretty nice if I could actually just mount it right off the bracket that I got. That'd be dope if I could tie it into the side this way, or even, you know, this way. I don't know, I'll have to play with it. But yeah, if I could mount this up by the tablet, if that cord's long enough, that would be awesome. Because then I could just plug it in right there by the cluster with everything else. And then this lead here we'll just use for HP tuners. So this stuff should work out, at least I hope it does. And then that'll be pretty dope. So let me open one of these cables. Okay, so here's the cable. And it's got this 90 on it, so I can get away with doing this. And then I was gonna take and tie it up to the USB plug like this. Actually, this probably will just work right here. So I might just run it parallel. That actually probably work pretty good. So yeah, I'll just put the tablet mount piece here. And then let me grab that USB splitter and see how far I can get away with this thing. So then that'll give me an idea where I want to start placing this, and I can think about that while I figure out what's going on with this wiring here. Because that's going to be the first thing today. I need to dig into this wiring and figure out which ignition signal is getting cut from the PCM when I crank the key and which one needs to be there. Because that's what's going on, is I'm hitting the key, PCM shutting down, so I got to figure that out. And then once I figure that out and it cranks on its own, then I'll crank it a little bit more. But we did crank it a bit yesterday, put it back on the charger again last night. As soon as I get that part figured out, then I'll try and start it, or well, I'll put fuel in it anyway, and then I'll try and start it, because we're at that point. So fuel in it, put the plugs back in, hook the wires up, plug the coil in, plug the injectors in, and then we'll try and crank this guy over and see if it'll fire. If it fires, I'll let it run through the heat cycle. I'll turn the tablet on and I'll kind of keep an eye on it real quick while we do that. And then in the meantime, while it's warming up and I keep an eye on that, I'll get the hole mounted for the USB plug, and I will try to permanently mount wherever I'm going to put this DLC splitter. That way it's easy enough for anybody to get to when they try to do anything with the car. That's helping me out. So let me see what kind of length we got here. I'm hoping I can get this thing started tonight. It would be nice. Wouldn't you know it? This thing is long enough. I can almost put it right here. Now I got some thinking to do. Or here. Let me think about this one. So I mean, if we could place it like right here, that wouldn't be bad, because that Bluetooth thing does lock on pretty hard to the DLC. It doesn't like to let go. That'd be in the way of my clutch foot though. What can I do with the wire? Probably just knock a hole in this piece here, do a zip tie, Oh, what do I do? What do I do? I'm spending too much time on this right now. I need to be figuring out the other thing, but this is where my mind goes. So it would sit kind of here, and then I can use this guy right like this, and then just tie this guy over anytime I want to hook HP tuners up, which is probably going to be all the time actually. And then that'll keep it out of the way. Definitely out of the way for my clutch foot. I don't have to worry about that. No, well, it looks like this guy's connecting already. I have to charge this guy. I haven't had it on the charger in almost a week, and it's only at 11%. Well, we got her. So we are communicating with the Bluetooth device, no problem. So I'm hoping that this splitter communicates with HP, and neither of the two interfere with each other. We'll be golden. We'll rock this setup, and we'll see what happens. I need to figure out why this thing won't crank on its own. It hits once and it quits because the PCM shuts down. So I'm gonna go to the PCM, figure out which circuit I'm losing. We'll go from there. Well, guys, not having the best of luck here. It has ignition power when you turn the key on. It also has ignition power when you put it in the crank position. Both of those are cycling like they're supposed to. It also has its grounds. It has its battery power. It's getting power through the starter relay to the ECM for the ECM to ground to activate the starter relay. We know it's doing it because it hits the starter and then it just quits for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I brought my scan tool out here, took the starter relay out, and then I have that switch that I use, which is just this guy. So it's just the 2 pins for the load side of the relay, and then just off on, so you can bypass any control and just manually power it with the load side, and the starter comes on. I tried something a little funny, and I unhooked the ECM C3, which is where the starter control circuit is, and I just took a jumper wire and I grounded it right to the battery. I went in and I hit the key and the starter rolled over, and it did not stop until I let go of the key. The ECM is shutting down on me and it's not holding the starter. So I don't know what's gonna happen if I try to do this, but what I think I'm gonna try and do right now, try and remove the starter circuit from the ECM connector, and I'm just gonna take a jumper wire and I'm gonna jump it right to battery ground again, and I'm gonna hook everything up and I'm gonna put fuel in it and I'm gonna see if it tries to start. If it doesn't want to start, then the next thing I'm gonna try to do, I'll take the starter switch and then I'll just hit it, and then I'll let it roll the engine over until the engine tries to fire. And when it tries to fire, I'll shut the switch off right away and see if it'll start idling itself. If it stays alive and lets me do that, then what I'll do is I'll probably just put a push button start in it, but everything will still get powered up off the ignition anyway. So I'll just take the starter circuit out of the ignition switch, and then I'll run that over to a push button, and I'll use that to send power out to the PCM for the ignition start circuit, as well as the starter relay itself. If this works, that's what it's going to be. I mean, if it's going to be a race car, it's going to be a race car. Turn the fuel pump on, so at least it did that. Battery's about to die though. Did crank on it quite a bit. Well, it looks like another night we ain't starting the car. Killed the battery already trying to crank it over a bunch. Key it up, PCM does turn the fuel pump on. You start cranking it, it turns the fuel pump on. We're holding fuel pressure. I don't know if I got spark or if I'm losing injector, and that's what I was trying to figure out. Can't even crank it up now because it won't even turn on now because the battery's so dead. Well, I guess it is what it is, guys. I'll let it charge and we'll see what happens. Try it again. I depinned the starter enable relay circuit from the ECM and I manually grounded it. Now when I hit it from the key, it just sits and it'll crank all day. Did check to see if the ECM was staying online by disconnecting the coil and then checking for ASD power, because the PCM does still control ASD relay. So I still have ASD power when this thing cranks, but I have no spark and I have no fuel. It does see RPM. It tells me that it's got cam sync or cam crank sync when I try to start it, or while I'm cranking it rather. And other than that though, I really don't know what's going on, because it picks up on it sees RPM while I crank. It turns the ASD relay back on, which turns the fuel pump on. So and I can feel the fuel pump coming on, but I have no injector pulse and I have no spark. So I don't know what the deal is here. So I'm going to put a post up on Facebook and see if I can get anybody to maybe give me a little bit of insight on something that I missed. Maybe they've done a similar thing as me, and and they ran into this issue. It doesn't roll over fast, but it's quick. It's like like a half a crank, and then it just quits. Like the PCM is just dropping the starter relay for some reason. So when I try to do it from the PCM with the key, that's what it's doing. But as soon as I can figure that part of it out, then I'm sure this thing will start because everything else is there. When I crank it over, it sounds healthy. But tomorrow I am supposed to have the overflow for the silver car. So when if that shows up, that'll be my plan tomorrow. And then this thing will pretty much be ready to go back on the road at that point. So I'll just have to go in, change the tune a little bit, take some boost out of it with the controller, and then we'll take it out for a rip and see what it does. But it just kind of bums me out because I was really hoping I could have got this white car started before those parts showed up. So I mean, today is Wednesday, and I've been trying to actually do this since Friday, so I'm almost a week into trying to figure out why this thing won't start for me. Now, I guess I can't say truthfully that it's been a full week, because we did have Pokemon Go Fest this weekend, and me and the wife did participate, and then Saturday night after Go Fest, actually probably about 5 o'clock, Go Fest went till 8, but at about 5 o'clock we went to Midland, and I was helping Josh out with his Supra. He's got an issue with his ECU, where it's not picking up battery voltage. So I'm not gonna call this one the end of the video, guys. This is probably gonna be a few days digging into this car here. So by the time you see this video, it'll probably be a few days from now, because I'm hoping that we can actually get somewhere with it, and then I can compile this in, and hopefully at the end of the video that I put together here for you guys, it'll start. But I guess if it don't, and I'll end up closing it out one of these days. But yeah, so I am gonna wrap this one up. I'm gonna get my tools put away, and then I'm going to try and come out here and see if I can come up with any ideas or get any feedback from anybody. I'll see you tomorrow. I went through the wiring again and double checked after talking with everybody last night. What I ended up doing was I went back in and I checked that ignition run power going into the PCM, and that's all it was ignition run. It wasn't ignition run start. So I went to the ignition switch again, double checked everything after I spent hours out here yesterday trying to do that, and realized that I didn't have an ignition run start circuit coming out of the ignition switch. Apparently I got rid of it. So what I did was I just took battery power and I jumped it over to the ignition run start circuit and turned the key on to power the ECM up, and then as soon as I hit the clutch pedal, the car rolled right over and it fired up. And I mean, it might have rolled twice before it actually fired. So we're gonna let this guy run, come up to temperature. I'm gonna shut it down, drain the oil, put the good oil back in it, probably take the seat back out, and then I'm gonna flip those brake lines so the staging brake will work, and then kind of just whip up some kind of an alignment for it, and I'm ready to drive. So we'll get our braking miles in. So it looks like I'll at least have one car for the racetrack come the end of this month. That AM fuel pump really isn't that bad, considering it's an external pump and the only exhaust I have is just a dump. I mean, there's nothing hooked up after the downpipe, so you probably can't see that. That's my exhaust system. We're dumping it right at the floor, so it's gonna be amazing, guys. Oh, and I need to get an O2 bung welded in. I don't know if you can see it from up here, but the O2 bungs on this thing are way underneath, and the O2 hits the floor. I don't know who built this downpipe or how the hell they made that work. I'm gonna put the O2 bung right in there, probably a little closer to the firewall from that spot where I got that circle drawn, and I can go ahead and get the wideband in here. That's why it's reading 22.4 right now, is because it's not actually hooked up to the exhaust. So it's not in the exhaust stream, it's not picking up anything, just clean air. But I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit talking over this. We're at 171 degrees. The fan should come on here in a minute. So as soon as they do, then I'll shut it down. We'll get the oil draining out of this guy. I'll get the seat pulled out. We'll get everything swapped over. We'll get the brake line swapped over. I'll get the back end in the air. We'll get the brakes bled. We'll get this guy put back together. And we're looking for the road, man. Now, unfortunately, I was really hung up on this car. The coolant overflow hasn't showed up for Mark's car yet, or the valve. So I'm still waiting on that to show up. That way I could put it in at one time and not leave it open overnight. So that did give me the opportunity to figure out exactly what was going on with my white car, and I am so happy that I did, guys. I was in a really bad mood yesterday, and even this morning, the wife drove the Caliber to her grandparents and lost the clutch on the way. And ended up, what happened was it just blew the slave cylinder right out. She said it had no clutch pedal, so the slave must have been sticking, and at some point it started to leak because the brake mass reservoir was almost empty. I want to try and find a way that I can plug that reservoir off and then just add an external slate or an external reservoir for the clutch master. I have a Brembo one. I would just have to put it in, but I have no way to actually cover the hole so it doesn't leak brake fluid out. I don't know if silicone will stand up to it, if there's anything that anybody has any idea that they might have used. If you do, please shoot me a PM. I'm looking to make this thing a 2 reservoir system. I'm tired of sharing it. But right now, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna park the orange car for now. She's okay with that until we get the race cars done. And then once they're done, what we're gonna do with the car is we're probably just gonna pull it in and we're gonna hang it up for the year, because we're gonna pull the trans. It's got 70,000 miles on the car since I bought it. So I'm gonna put a clutch in it. I'm gonna do the slave cylinder. I'm thinking about upgrading it to the Evo 10 master cylinder because Real Tune makes a kit for it. So if we can get there, that would line up the clutch system, and then we'll get some powder coating done in the meantime while the car sits over the winter. Let me get inside here. I think this car should have turned the fans on, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna shut it down. We'll get the oil draining out, and then I'll get the seat pulled out of here and we'll start getting those brake lines flipped. And like I said, when I was trying to talk about this car, because that reservoir didn't show up today, we're supposed to get rain tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. If that's the case and the roads are wet, if I can catch a good hour and a half maybe on Saturday or Sunday, I'll pull the bumper off and I'll get the overflow done. But if I can get all that stuff done and we got some dry roads, we'll change the tune and we'll take this guy back out and see what we do with it. So but like I said, guys, I'm gonna go inside, I'm gonna get this guy drained, I'm gonna shut this thing down, get it draining off, and live in the happiness that my car finally started. Thank God. 4 days I spent on this thing. So best thing about it, shuts off from the key. So happy. Oh, and I got this push button here that I'm going to use. It's hooked up to a module. It's got like an inline relay kind of deal. The wires on the switch are actually really small. So what I'm going to end up doing, I don't know if you guys could hear me earlier, is I'm going to put that push button right here so we can start the car. And then I'll put the charger on this side for the tablet itself. So I'm gonna drain the oil right now, get the brake lines flipped, and then I'll work on gravity bleeding the brakes while I get these holes drilled for the charger and the push button. Looking this thing over, I don't have any leaks. Motor is a dry. Nothing around the pump, nothing around the balancer. Now I know it's only ran for like 10, maybe 15 minutes, but she ran healthy, made excellent vacuum. No fuel leaks. You can smell the Cerakote burning into the manifold. Oh, it's a thing of beauty. I love that smell, just because it reminds me of my car starting. Pan's dry, filter dry, pipes are dry. But you guys, I cannot believe I got this car to start today. Huge relief for me. I'm gonna get this push button hooked up. We'll get the charger hooked up and get the brakes bled. And then I'll just plan to set an appointment with Muffler Man and I'll get the car up there and we'll get an alignment done. And then I can get my braking miles and dyno. And depending on where we're at with everything else, I think we're going to start moving forward with the roll cage. I've been talking to somebody. We're going to go with the plan. I do have to let everybody know yet that did reach out to me that was going to offer some assistance. I do appreciate you guys reaching out. I will let you know as I told you I would. But I do have somebody local that we're going to end up going with. It's going to be cool. So we got 4 weeks, and if I can get the alignment done on like Tuesday or Wednesday, if not sooner, if I can manage to somehow put 40 miles on the car, because I don't know what I'm going to be at for fuel, because it does have a 2-gallon cell with ethanol. It's probably going to be less than 40 miles. So I'll take some fuel with me, and then I'll get my miles put on, and if I run out of fuel, I'll just fill it back up. If I could do 40 miles a day, I'd have my miles in a week. And then I could try and squeeze in a dyno. I don't know how soon I'll be able to get into one. Worst case, we'll just do some street tuning, make sure our air fuel's right, and we'll take some timing out. And then once we know our air fuel's right, I mean, even if we don't get a chance to really get to the dyno and start playing with spark, at least I can have air fuel tuning right. We'll have a little lower timing, but we could still test with the car and make sure everything else is going to be okay. We can go down the track on lower than normal timing with good air fuel. We can get something scheduled for a dyno, and then we can really start playing with the timing and see what it does. And then after we're done getting a good after we're done getting a good tune with ethanol for higher boost, then what we'll do is we'll put that C85 in, and then we'll see what that stuff does. We're supposed to be able to drop that in there and get like 4% gain. We'll find out. I'm interested to play with it. It's not cheap fuel. It's definitely not something I'm going to run all the time. A few passes I go where I'm really trying to run a number. Obviously, we're going to have good fuel in it, but every other time we race with it, it's probably just going to be nothing special, just your $2 a gallon stuff straight out of the pump. And I'm hoping that this thing will go like 1060s, 1070s on that fuel, maybe even the 50s, but we got to get there. I got to get the rest of this thing done. The longer I stand here and talk to this camera, the more time I'm wasting on trying to actually get this guy done. Let's button everything up and really start moving forward with that car. I pulled the seat out, we flipped the lines on a staging brake and re-bled everything, so we're good to go there. It does hold the car. I did get this relay box hooked up. That's for the start switch that I have. It has its own relay mechanism, but I ended up using the ignition feeds that come out of the cluster and grounds to go ahead and take care of some of these things. One of the ignition feeds for the cluster is going to turn the charger on for the tablet. And then the other ignition feed is going to provide power source to the relay controller, and then another ignition feed with a heavier gauge wire that comes in and feeds the load side of this relay. That way we can get that signal out to the starter relay and get this guy to crank up. So I did end up using butt connectors on this stuff because this wire is aluminum wire, where this is copper stranded wire, and the aluminum stuff doesn't like to take solder too well. So I did butt connector those. It's got some, it's got the shrinkable butt tube, so it's all glue tight, or it's all watertight now because it's got some glue inside. And I got the ground here that's going to be for the skim and the charger, so all that stuff will come up here. And then I have this ground here that'll come up and tie into the aluminum plate that will ground itself out to this plate, but that piece will be the ground for the control side on this. So get all this stuff hooked up. I'll get the switch plugged in. I do have everything set up in this plate right here, so I got the charger and the push button. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get this plate set in here, get all this stuff bolted in, and then see if I can start it. That was cool. So even this thing lights up blue, and I didn't realize that. But it's charging a tablet. I hate that so much. I hate it. But anyway, if you listen, I don't know if the camera's picking up on that clicking, but that is the relay hitting for the starter. So what I gotta do now is I gotta take and hook this wire up to here. That way I can actually send power down. So we know that the relay and everything works. I can finish wiring this side of it. All of this is mounted in, the charging port's working, everything's ready to go here. My wires just barely cleared back here. I got lucky with that. I didn't realize that they were gonna come back so far, but where I cut that off ended up being just perfect. So we got away with it, we got lucky. Now I'm going to take and mount this DLC connector up here, because I did hold it and it looks like it'll sit here pretty good. So I'm gonna put some self-tapping screws through this guy. We'll put some oil back in the car, mount the seat again. I'll probably end up vacuuming this out because I do have some random bits of metal and small pieces of insulation that I've been stripping off wires. So I got all this stuff put back together. Now I'm gonna get this cleaned up. We'll get everything else put back together, and then we'll put some oil in this guy and we'll try and fire it back up again tonight off the push button, just to make sure everything's gonna work. Now what I'm doing here is, because I'm using Rotella T6, they've taken a lot of zinc out. I'm using a Lucas zinc adder. So you use half of this for an oil change is what I'm told. Go squeeze this guy, half of this guy in, and then I'll top it off. Okay, now I just gotta hook that wire up and then I can try and start this guy. So I'll be right back in a minute, guys. Actually, I'm gonna bring you in just one wire this time. Nothing too long. Not like sitting on the floor watching me do it for like 7 hours. Alright guys, so got everything hooked up. I got oil in the car, put the other battery back in it, got the tablet charger hooked up, got the push button starts all hooked up. There we go, that's straight. And then ended up mounting the DLC thing up here, and then I just zip tied the wires to the wires coming off of the fuse box. Keep it away from the bracket, or to keep it away from this aluminum here, so I'm not worried about it rubbing a hole at all. And then I have this lead right here I can tie into HP tuners, and I can run it behind the cluster if I want to, or I can run it over top of the steering column. Doesn't matter to me. It will still make the run. I'm actually used to plugging it in way down here and then running it over the steering column over to the passenger seat when I log anyway. But because we don't have a seat or anything, I'm just gonna have to set the computer against this lip here where the seat rail is, and then hope that it doesn't slide around too far. Staging brake's feeling good. Everything else feels right. Let's see if we can start it from the key here. Put the steering wheel on just to be cool. I got a charger that lights up and a push button start that lights up. Might as well rice it up and put the steering wheel in the show too. Let's do this. See if this works. Let's plug this guy in. push button works, guys. That's so cool. Yeah, there we go. 41 pounds idle fuel pressure, 70 pounds idle oil pressure, and 22 inches of vacuum. And a door that rattles like crazy. Well, I think we'll tie these guys off. Better. There we go. Okay, yep, we're already hooked up. It actually starts from the button. That's dope. That's so cool. Yeah. Turned the day into a win. Put the wheels on. We're gonna start looking for braking miles, guys. As long as we got dry roads, because I got radials and no wipers and plastic rear windows with no seals, that could potentially be a problem for us. When we get some good weather, we're gonna go for a ride. I do have to get 200 miles on this thing before he'll let me go wide open. That's right from the turbo builder. We're there, guys. I did talk to my guy that we're gonna do the cage with, and he said he's got one more vehicle over there that he's got to get done first. So as soon as he gets that one done, I can get my car over there and we'll get the cage and everything put in. But in the meantime, I am gonna try and schedule an alignment early next week, hopefully like Monday or Tuesday, and then as soon as I can get that done, we'll start driving it. We'll get our mileage on. We'll get some video of us driving the car around. Oh God, man. Whew. This is exciting. I am so happy. I probably don't look that happy, but I'm really tired because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. Let's see if the tablet's got it. 1:39. I'm gonna wrap this one up for the night, guys. I gotta put all my tools and stuff away. I'm gonna take the tablet inside and I'm gonna let it charge because it is at 1%. It's probably gonna die by the time I get out here again. The car did not run long enough to charge it. So I'll take that in, we'll get that charged, I'll get everything cleaned up in here. Not 100% sure what I'm gonna try and do tomorrow. We'll go from there. I might try and work on getting the bracket made for the staging brake. Depends on the weather. If we got good weather, I'll pull the bumper off Mark's car and hopefully that overflow shows up so I can get that put in. And then if it's still not raining by the time the overflow is put in and the bumper and everything's back on, we can start working with the tune, turn the boost controller down, and then we'll take that guy for a ride too when we get good weather. So I do appreciate you guys checking this one out. Definitely thanks. Thanks to everybody that reached out when I put the post up looking for help to try and figure this out. I mean, the list is huge, guys. Commented with information trying to help me figure this out or PM me. So I do appreciate you guys with that help. You guys really came through. I did overlook something stupid, and per some others' recommendations, we figured this thing out. So fortunately enough, I was able to kind of turn it into a race car scenario. So I got to use my racer button here. So that's kind of cool. I bought that thing years ago at a flea market, and I ended up, for whatever reason, I guess when I put this car together, I left the ignition run circuit or run start circuit out of the harness. So I mean, I guess I kind of set myself up for the opportunity to put this button in here, and maybe that was my intentions when I put the harness together. But as I started putting it together, I was expecting it to start from the key, but it does kind of balance this thing out. So I turn it on, we got the blue on either side. So God, those Pro Sport gauges are so loud. I hate it. Why? But anyway, guys, like I said, I'm out here, I'm rambling on. I'm gonna wrap this one up for the night. Check out our Instagram, check out our Facebook, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Definitely appreciate you guys checking me out and all the feedback and help with trying to get this car to start. You guys have yourself a good one, stay safe, and we will see you at the track. Thanks.